I have the receipts. You will get these receipts. All will be revealed within the next 10 minutes because it seems to be a great mystery to a lot of people in the mainstream media. Why did Jill Biden say what Jill Biden said last week? Well, I'm going to explain it to you in ways that anybody should be able to understand. Hi there. Welcome to the National Briefing. This is Kelly Nash, and last week a lot of people were a little bit stunned when Jill Biden went on the CBS Morning Show for an exclusive interview and said this.
Were you horrified as you saw it unfold?
I wasn't horrified, I was frightened because I had never, ever seen Joe like that before or since. Never.
Or since?
Yes, or
You've
since.
never seen him like
Never.
that?
No.
What happened?
I don't know what happened. I mean, as I watched it, I thought, oh my God, he's having a stroke. And it scared me to death.
Well, of course you would be scared to death if the man you married 40 plus years ago, the man you've built a life with, he's having a stroke. He's going to die. He's going to be paralyzed. He's going to have all kinds of problems for the rest of his life. He's already in his 80s and he's stroking out, for God's no. The Biden that was probably most likely to be having a stroke at that moment was in fact Jill Biden. Jill Biden is clinging to power at that point. And all we got to do, literally, it's the rope-a-dope strategy. That's how we got elected. We rope-a-doped. And for those of you not familiar with the famous Muhammad Ali strategy of just let the bigger boxer just punch himself out, and then when he's tired, we'll just come on in and give him a couple of jabs, and he'll go over. Let Donald Trump take all the shots he wants. He's going to look like a big, mean brute, and Joe Biden will just stand there like the classy, elegant man that he is, the elder statesman. I don't need to respond to your insults. I don't need to take the bait. And America will yet again side with Joe Biden, the man who, the first ever successful campaign for president, run almost exclusively from a basement. Between the reruns of Golden Girls and Matlock, this guy won himself the presidency by giving a couple of interviews that were pre-scripted. And anytime he went off script, it became national news. If you don't know if you're for me or the other guy, then you ain't black. That guy, all he had to do was shut his mouth. But he didn't. He tried to actually answer questions. Now, imagine, if you will, okay, if you're to just take Jill Biden at face level, I thought the man was having a stroke. So how does she respond? As soon as she can get this guy in front of some cameras, that night, this is Jill Biden.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Lie!
Wow. That is showing great concern. Look, everybody's saying, what are you talking about? You didn't think he was having a stroke? And when you say I've never seen that behavior before, did you not have access to the nightly news? Because even the nightly news would from time to time show him stumbling off into the woods, or couldn't even make it across the front lawn, for God's sakes. He was walking like a cat with boots on. When the cats can't feel the ground and they don't know how to walk, that's how his feet were going. He got lost. He literally got lost one time walking from the helicopter to the door at the White House. The Secret Service was like, bro, got to go this way. You're off course. Mission drift. The mission was to walk from the helicopter to the dang door, and he had mission drift. So you haven't seen it before, which means either you were ignoring it or you don't even pay attention to the guy. And you haven't seen it since? You haven't seen it since. The interview that he gave, and I hate to say that the man has cancer, but that interview shows great cognitive decline. And that's a pre-scripted, well-lit, sat in your living room, and he looked like he had the intellect of about maybe a seventh grader at that point. I'm sure it's down to like third grade by now. And again, I don't say that to belittle the man. Lots of people have these problems. But you didn't care about that. You wanted the power. Jill Biden, desperate for power, desperate for legacy. That's the other thing. Desperate for power, desperate for legacy. How will we be remembered? And she's probably going to live 10 or 15 years past her husband. I don't want to be the widow of a dope. I want to be the widow of a great, esteemed president. Now, Alex Thompson, an Axios reporter, tells Fox News Biden aides told Jake Tapper and myself that they had seen him act this way before and after. Those moments became more and more difficult to predict and conceal. Now, in case you're wondering, now Alex Thompson is presenting himself as a hero, a mainstream media, I'm the guy who cracked the story on Joe Biden. Let's just be clear as to who this guy is. This guy wrote a book. What was the name of it? Original Sin. The Original Sin book by Alex Thompson came out almost a year after that debate. And then the mainstream media loved that so much, this honest reporting, that they actually gave him an award. Here he is accepting his award from Kristen Walker.
The award was established in 1981 to recognize a correspondent who personifies the journalistic excellence and personal qualities of Aldo Beckman: impartiality, integrity, and a deep knowledge of the presidency. This year's award goes to Alex Thompson of Axios. The judges said Thompson's aggressive reporting on President Biden, especially leading up to and after the Trump-Biden debate, revealed the president's cognitive decline was impacting his ability to do his job, information the White House tried to conceal.
Well, hell, I should have won an award then. You should have won an award. Just about everybody who's ever watched Fox, Newsmax, I would call that honest journalism, went on YouTube and looked at Joe Biden. I mean, anybody could have told you this guy was in cognitive decline, and we were screaming about it before the 2020 election that this guy was a mental midget at that point. Nobody gave us an award. No awards were given, only to Alex Thompson, who reported it after the damn election was over. So let's get back to why is this happening? Because that's the big question. What is going on here? Jill Biden comes out of nowhere and says she's never seen this behavior before or after. I thought he was having a stroke. Don't you people have any sympathy for me? I was concerned for my husband. No, you weren't. You were not concerned in the least. What is actually happening at this moment is the most popular president in American history. The first guy to crack the unbelievable barrier of 80 million votes. Even Donald J. Trump still has not gotten 80 million votes. Barack Obama didn't even get close to 80 million votes. Donald Trump, I think, is in second place with the most votes ever at 77 million. Joe Biden got 81 million votes in the 2020 election. And so we have to believe 81 million people voted for him. Joe Biden, if we just play out the story the way they want it to be played out, Joe Biden goes in as the most popular president in American history. Joe Biden, during his term, begins to suffer cognitive decline. He's a victim of old age. That's a sympathetic figure. He's also a hero because he stopped the fascism of Trump. What does the left do with that information? Because the only thing that matters at this point for the Joe Biden legacy is the museum, the library. Barack Obama has just built one of the ugliest structures in American history, and it's like $1 trillion for this thing. And it's, it's an event, it's a this, it's a that, whatever. The guy who's way more popular than Obama, according to Google AI, if you ask right now how much money has been raised for the Joe Biden Presidential Library, which is an estimated $200 to $250 million to build, as of right now, how many contributions have they received? Not one. They had one. They had John Morgan, the guy who's the big famous Morgan & Morgan lawyer guy. That guy gave $800,000 and then asked for it back and said, I don't think you're ever going to get a presidential library unless it's an old school, what do they call it, like a booksmobile they used to bring to the grammar schools back in the 80s or whatever. That will be the equivalent of the Joe Biden library. Now, there is $4 million, but that was left over from his presidential election. Remember, Joe Biden left the Democrats in such disarray. They're still trying to pay off the debt of the Kamala Harris campaign. They're still not out of debt on the Kamala Harris campaign. Never mind, can we build Joe Biden a library? But again, Jimmy Carter had been considered the least popular president in my lifetime. Now, I'm just looking back at, I said, let's go back to JFK. JFK is apparently tied or maybe even slightly ahead of Ronald Reagan in approval ratings at this point. And how would I know what JFK was like as a president? I wasn't here. But JFK, Ronald Reagan seem about tied. Barack Obama comes in like that third spot, not because he was a great president. Let's be honest. He was a historical figure. Then Bill Clinton, then H.W. Bush, one-termer? Yeah, one-termer H.W. Bush. Then Gerald Ford, the guy who pardoned Nixon. Okay. Lyndon Johnson, George W. Bush. Gosh, that guy was such a disappointment. Richard Nixon. And then at that point, it was then Jimmy Carter. And today, below them, they say, Donald Trump and now Joe Biden. Joe Biden is now the most unpopular president of most of our lifetimes. I mean, some of you may be in your 80s or whatever, and so you were around for pre-Kennedy events. But, yeah, Joe Biden's the least popular. Previous to that, it would have been Jimmy Carter. But Jimmy Carter got a presidential library. I've been to his library. It's down in Atlanta. He raised like $28 million 40 years ago or whatever it was to raise. Private donations came in because the people thought it was important that even though he was very unpopular, even though he's going to be remembered as basically a complete failure as the president, just record inflation, the disaster with the Iranians, all of that, it doesn't matter. I mean, he still deserves a library, and so they got him a library. The people don't think that Joe Biden is worth squat. That is the bottom line. Jill Biden is out here begging and pleading for somebody to validate her parking ticket, validate my husband so I don't have to live the last 10, 15 years of my life ashamed of who I am.
In a culture drowning in spin and censorship, this is your lifeboat, the National Briefing.